fractional is it's become this buzzword in the last couple of years, but at its essence, it really means part-time. So it means you are getting a high level of experience and input into your firm without the full-time price tag. So fractional, I think, is great. What I've seen in a lot of law firms is they've gone the route of maybe they hire a CFO or an integrator COO. Those two roles are fairly interchangeable. But then they try to also assign them HR and marketing and operations. And so you're trying to get one person who does all the things in this full-time role. But fractional gives these smaller firms the ability to go out and get subject matter expertise and really good strategy and critical thinking in different areas of expertise.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Great guest today, Rachel Steininger. And we're going to get right to Rachel after one short commercial for TGR Live. And if you haven't heard of it before, TGR Live is our live event. It's an annual event. We're doing technically the fourth event, but it's the third consecutive year. We took a little break there during that small global medical crisis. And we are rocking. We have some amazing guests. And I guess this is like the formal announcement. Stacey Brown Randall teaches us how to get referrals without even asking. She's an awesome keynote. She's going to be great. My friend Steve Gersten is incredible. And he's got a great presentation called 4 Ways to Make Millions from Your Case. And he's got 5 different multi-million-dollar law firms. So he's amazing to learn from. Rob Levine, another multi-million-dollar law firm. And he's going to share his operations secrets around intake and process. He's amazing. March 15th and 16th, information available at 10 Golden Rules. Emails are going out in the next couple of weeks. We have early bird pricing. Great. The hotel's amazing. The Opal Grand, right on the ocean in Delray Beach, Florida. March 15th and 16th. It'll be beautiful. Guaranteed weather at that time of year. There's no guarantee with the weather, right, Rachel? Anyways, thank you for indulging me. Rachel, welcome to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast.
Thank you, Jay. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't you do the introduction and tell us a little bit about your background and your firm?
Yeah, so I work as a fractional COO. And what that means is I step into businesses, particularly in the legal and professional services space. And I help take over those things that the business owner usually has a coulda, woulda, shoulda list. Like, I wish I could get to these things. I know that I can run my firm more smoothly, but really they want to concentrate on practicing law and business development. They don't want to spend their time figuring out how to make this business run more effectively. And so I step into that role where I'm really serving as a strategic advisor, but also doing project management. So it's not just about telling you what to do like you'd experience in coaching. And as I'll share, I've been a coach, so I do understand what that is, but I'm also stepping in and saying, okay, I'll talk to the vendors. I'll find the right software. I'll help manage the implementation projects. And I think for a lot of business owners, as I've heard from some of them, I don't want any more homework. And that no homework approach or minimal homework approach, really just involving them when let's just make sure that this is helping achieve your goals, the things that we're working on.
I get it. I
Yeah.
understand what you do. There was that
Yeah.
commercial a few years ago with the easy button.
Yes. It's the easy
COO
button.
for
Yeah.
law firms, you're the easy button.
It is the easy button. And so when law firms are ready to graduate from, hey, we've got this pulled together, we're making enough money to, hey, I think we could scale this thing, or I'm ready for a little more freedom, or I'm ready to hire some more people. That's where there's sort of a point of chaos. I see it often around about 8 to 10 total headcount. It starts to need some more structured support and strategic support. So that's where I come in. And I have an investment background. So I spent the first 18 years of my career in the investment world, which means I'm always thinking about not just is this efficient, but is it effective? Are we getting ROI? And thinking about the client experience as part of it
So
too.
how did you pivot to legal?
So I would say part of it is I spent a lot of time in the lawyer's office when I was in my investment world. So I led the client relationship team for large financial institutions. So we're talking 100 million to several $billion relationships, highly regulated. So I know what the difference is when somebody mistypes something that's a negative sign instead of a positive sign. Had that happen once, we had to cut a check for $250,000. So the reputational risk, the regulatory risk. I understand all that. And to do that right in the investment world, that meant sitting down in the general counsel's office and saying, where's my line? And how can I maximize the amount of return for the risk that we're taking on? regulatory risk being one of those. So a lot of familiarity with lawyers, a lot of contract reviews, a lot of regulatory document reviews in my background. And then also having had some personal experience with lawyers, I find them to be very good problem solvers and very good partners in terms of working out what the best path forward is. So it was a very natural fit. And when I started my business and coaching, one of my first clients was a family law office, and that led to another attorney and another attorney and another attorney. So
That's great. And you're very highly recommended in the lawyer community. So that's where we met. So one of the things is we're all getting more comfortable with fractional, what it means, how it works. And there's so many more fractional employees available, fractional experts available.
yeah.
We have a fractional integrator. We run the EOS operating system, and our integrator is fractional. He works with about 3 companies and solves, takes on 1 or 2 big problems for us every month or 2, and it works great. We have a slightly fractional marketing director because she's teaching a couple university courses. And again, it works great. She just has to remind us, like, don't schedule me from 3 to 5 on Tuesdays because I'm actually sitting in front of my class. And other than that, she's awesome. So what does fractional mean, and how do your clients understand it, or your prospects? How do you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, fractional is kind of it's become this buzzword in the last couple of years, but at its essence, it really means part-time. So it means you are getting a high level of experience and input into your firm without the full-time price tag. So fractional, I think, is great. What I've seen in a lot of law firms is they've gone the route of maybe they hire a CFO or an integrator COO. Those two roles are fairly interchangeable, but then they try to also assign them HR and marketing and operations. And so you're trying to get one person who does all the things in this full time role. But fractional gives these smaller firms the ability to go out and get subject matter expertise and really good strategy and critical thinking in different areas of expertise. I can dabble in CFO. I have finance degrees. I can dabble in that, but you want me better as the integrator COO or client operations, because that's where my expertise is. But somebody else might be really good at the CFO part, and HR I think is a specialty too. Marketing is a specialty, as we know. So fractional is just an advantage to people to be able to get that expertise without the full-time price tag.
Yeah, I guess that's the way I look at it. Like,
Yeah.
I might hire a part-time data entry clerk, but
Yes.
if I'm hiring someone who's going to essentially be my chief operating officer, and first of all, it's not a full-time job, and second of all, I want the $300,000, $400,000 salaried person, but I can't justify $300,000, and it's not a full-time job. But I get that level of expertise for that 8 to 10 hours a week, and it works out great.
Yeah,
So
and that's the advantage I think of fractional. And then, it also means that for the firm though, you're also layering in maybe some other kind of support. So a lot of firms I work with, I really look for somebody who's already hired an office manager or an administrative assistant, because what I'm not doing, and this is, important to the conversation, is I'm not coming in and doing the day-to-day tasks. We're really looking at what are those strategic projects that need to be moved forward. You mentioned EOS. So if you have rocks for the quarter that require some level of involvement, that's not, you don't have the bandwidth or the skill set to do on your plate. It's great to hand that off to the appropriate fractional, but it's not so much who's answering phones, who's reordering the printer paper, keeping up with the day-to-day tasks. And so that's, I think, the other thing to distinguish these fractional executives that can come in. So your CFO will still need a bookkeeper. They're not going to do the bookkeeping too unless they have a team to support doing that.
that's a great one. We touched on EOS and operating systems, and I know you're operating system flexible. Why don't you describe the operating systems and how you feel they work for law firms and how important they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's most important, and you can use EOS, you can use another. I have coached my clients through one that I call the acceleration engine. But what's most important to it is that you have a clear set of goals that are going to drive you forward. There is this tendency towards shiny object syndrome, or just adding on all the things. I'm a very impatient person. I would love for everything to be done yesterday, right? So we load up too much and then we penalize ourselves or punish ourselves when we don't get it all done. And what an operating system, I think, at its the first level does is it really harnesses the focus of the firm. So we can't do everything at once. And I try to advise my clients that no to something does not mean no forever. It just means no, not right now. There are other things that are going to move the needle on the outcomes that we're looking for faster or more effectively than potentially something else on the list. And we can always get to those things later. We're kind of trying to tip over the biggest domino first, and that starts the chain reaction of growth. So that's, I think, number one with a operating system. And that's what you would call in EOS your rocks. You might call them your OKRs and other systems, or just priorities, like whatever you want to call them for your next quarter. And sometimes when a firm is in rapid growth, I try and get them down to like, what are we doing in the next 6 weeks? Like we don't even need to think 3 months ahead because things are changing so rapidly. And then the other aspect of that is the day-to-day accountability towards that. It's very easy to set those goals and then forget about them and the noise of the day-to-day. Every business has that, but we know that lawyers have that especially. If you're in something like employment law, I work with a couple employment lawyers, and yeah, the things that come out of nowhere, and you got to drop everything to deal with that one thing right there. And then, so having a method for keeping that front and center, those non day-to-day priorities. And then finally, what do you do on the back end to make sure you're iterating, improving, documenting, and putting those things into long-term processes? That is an ever-evolving process. Nothing is ever really perfect and nothing is ever really static in business. So how do we have a process for understanding that we're going to be in a state of continuous improvement? And that's what allows us to, as I like to say, stack and scale.
We both talk a lot about AI in our presentations. You did an AI presentation in our networking group the other day. One thing that I'm sensing in the last 6 months is AI has definitely upset the apple cart.
Mhm.
In the marketing world, it's definitely changing things. And if it hasn't changed your practice area in law, it will in the next 6 months because so many people are integrating AI into their operations. And it definitely changes the way things get done. And it definitely changes pricing structures. It changes staffing structures. So if it's changing the marketplace, if we can agree if you haven't felt the rumble in the jungle for the last 6 months, it's coming in the next 6 months. What would you say are a few of the things that you're dealing with firms in this changing environment?
I would say that one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people are asking about how to use AI, but they've missed some of the things they could have done before. AI is not new. It's the LLM. So these language models, generative AI like ChatGPT, that is new. And I think that has inspired a lot of firms to say, hey, we can actually replace out some of the human components of what we do, or we can augment the skill sets of our attorneys to move forward. And so that's great. But there are a lot of things that I've noticed that businesses have missed from a just data integrity standpoint, having one system talk to another system. And the more that you have that, the better and more ready you are for AI. I know you had the founder of Eve on here, and they talked about how their tool can look into different pieces of the process, which means the AI can learn better and can become more effective. So I'm seeing a little bit of businesses asking for AI, but actually really fundamentally just needing some of the automations and some of the pre-ChatGPT versions of AI. AI has been around since the 1950s, so it's not new by any stretch. It's come to this new point in its evolution, which means we're evolving. And then I would also just say, as I'm looking at these firms, I've done full speeches on this, so I could probably go off on a number of different tangents. But I would just say, from a lawyer's perspective, right, where we're worried about data integrity, that might be some of the holdbacks. 90%, this is industry, like across industries, so not just lawyers, but 90% of employees are using their personal ChatGPT accounts to do work. So if you are not adopting it, even if you aren't ready for whatever the big growth plan is with AI, you also need to look at it from a risk perspective. And I know lawyers care about the risk side. So how do we look at where you're going to funnel people's use of AI? Because I don't think it's fair for us to think humans are going to stop being humans. We want to use the technology. It's fun to use. There's a lot of reasons why it feels very productive. It's not always productive according to the data, but 90% of employees are using.
So at a very minimum, get the $20 paid
Yes, pay for
GPT
it, lock
product.
down your data,
Really what
and
you need is the $200 professional product.
yeah.
If you're
And
going
then
to be putting any client files in there or anything like that.
yes. And then I would also say, I think there's a lot of lawyers who are trying to use AI to become a better lawyer. And what I would say is, let's become better at getting rid of the things you're not so good at, because you are still going to be a better critical thinker than ChatGPT. If you're in ChatGPT or any of these models, sometimes you're typing in there, you're like, you are worse than the worst employee that I have. Other times it's great. So I mean, our ability to use agentic AI, I mean, I'm sure you're using that on a marketing front, right? Some of that is incredible, but that doesn't mean I'm using it to become a better lawyer or a better COO or a better marketer. I'm more using it to get rid of all the stuff that stops me from doing that.
I always like to give the description too, because people are less familiar than you and I. Agentic AI basically means the AI is like an agent, or it's 3 or 4 jobs, and you're giving it 3 or 4 jobs to do. So
Yeah.
one job could be go out and grab all my finances and put them in the P&L, do a first draft of that, or go out and do the keyword research every day and do our competitive keyword research and compile a report on how we're doing on our SEO every day. So things that you used to do manually, you can assign AI agents to do for you.
Yes.
What
And
that's how you're using it as well.
yeah, and I think it's this combination of automations. If you were to use something like Zapier or Make or now N8N with a little bit of thinking in there from AI, that's where it goes from a pure automation, which is a bunch of if then statements, to agentic AI. And when I simplify it for people is when you're thinking about any process, whether it's using AI or not, you're always looking to achieve a certain outcome. So if we think about this as just a 3-step process, and a lot of this is based on like habit formation, like BJ Fogg's tiny habits. It's very similar to this, right? We've got an outcome we want, which is the new good habit or the work outcome. And then we have a trigger that starts that. And then we have actions in between. And in the case of agentic AI, the outcome is not to have AI. The outcome is to get your P&L, to convert leads at a better rate, to make sure that when you get to the intake call, you're talking to qualified leads. But the action is somebody lands on your website and starts chat with the chatbot or submits a form or something triggers it. And then we have actions, and both the trigger and the actions can be AI related. But the outcome is still the outcome. And that's what's important about the process and the strategy behind it.
You were also explaining to me earlier that when you start with clients, a lot of times it's not about the playbook. First, you're starting by doing some research and finding out some foundational things around like software, data. You want to talk about that process?
Yeah. So, well, I think taking it kind of up a level, what I want to understand about each of my clients is not just where they want to go. I call it the 3 I's or beyond SMART goals. So we have our SMART goals. Like I want to go from 1 million to 3 million or 3 to 5 million, or there's some other metric that we're looking at. But then we also want to look at what is the identity of the firm. So who do we want to be in the marketplace? What do we want people saying about us? Who are our clients? Who are our peers? Who are our employees? So that culture brand, kind of wrapping that all up into one.
So
And
important.
yeah. And then what's the individual goal? So what do I want as a managing partner or as an owner to achieve out of all of this? And for some, it might be more thought leadership. For some, it's just get this admin off my plate right now. So it's varying, right? Depending on your time of life or what your exit plans are or anything like that. So I always want to understand all three of those for each of my clients. And so we'll spend a lot of time in this context mode. And the desire for a lot of clients is let's just jump in and let's just get it done. But as I try to describe to them, I don't want to take you on a road trip to Minneapolis when you want to go to Albuquerque. We're trying to get you in the right direction. And as you know, you could have two personal injury firms and one wants to go gangbusters and just really, really grow. And you've got another who's like, I just really want to serve clients well and have good quality of life. And 3 years later, they might change their minds because their life has shifted. But we want to understand all of that. So I want to take people on the right road trip.
I got two of the three. I
Yeah.
got identity, and
Yes.
we're spending a lot of time with firms figuring out who you are and what your market position is.
Yes.
Particularly with Morgan & Morgan coming into so many markets, you've got to figure out who you are and make sure that you're super consistent in every point of communication. And it also helps you with your firm, right? If you want to be the guys who care about your community and that's your marketing position, that's awesome. Let's make sure we line up one community event each month. So the first one, identity. The second one is your individual goals. What was
Mhm.
the third I?
Indicators. So things like KPIs, your key performance indicators or your SMART goals. So all three of those, like thinking about a Venn diagram. But you're right. Like brand is so important and you see it as a marketer, you could say, and a lot of lawyers will just say, you guys have kind of boring brands. We're like, we're honest, we're ethical. It's like, well, that's kind of a pay to play value. What makes you you? And as we're developing processes, especially in the client operations, we have I would say not only the ability, but the obligation to fulfill on whatever that brand promise was inside of the marketing. So we want to do a good job, get the lawyer part right, but we also want to deliver on the brand part. So I need to understand that when I'm developing processes, because that might mean we insert people somewhere where in another firm we might insert AI or an automation, or we might be more careful about how we're inserting AI because we care about what the brand feel is to it. And then the individual part really comes in where some owners, some managing partners are like, I just want to be a managing partner. And so we can structure the delegation and the assignment of that process around their goals versus another one who says, I really just want to practice law. And that's another way we structure it. So honing
I'm
in on that.
often taken aback when I have an initial conversation with a prospect. So many firms don't know the key numbers they need to know.
Yes.
Like, how many leads do you get? Oh, I don't know. What's your conversion rate? Oh, we convert 95% of the cases we want. No, that's not
Yeah.
real because that's not the number I'm looking for. How many cases do you sign in a month? And some people don't even know the average. Like, they'll tell you how many cases are sitting in their to-do list.
Yes.
And what's the value of each case? So we want to get to what's the cost per case that you're targeting based on the value per case. And those are my marketing numbers that I want to know. But so many firms, couldn't even tell you exactly their revenue and their increase in revenue on a rolling basis. What are some of the key numbers that firms need to know?
First, I would say starting with your marketing numbers is a very good place to start. When a firm is struggling to grow, very often the first place to look is on the marketing side because, as we know, cash is king. So if you don't have enough numbers flowing in as leads, we can't even test marketing strategies or brand or things like that. So all those marketing numbers that you just mentioned are really key. When it flows into the client operations side, we're looking at the length of time that it takes overall to service an account, and different practices in law are going to have very different numbers. But we're also looking at then breaking down that process. I think the intake process, and I know you guys work a lot with your clients around the intake process. That's one of the most definable pieces of the client operation process or the client journey. And if we can get that right, we're really solidifying, especially in those first moments after somebody commits to working with the firm, really solidifying that trust that they've put there to say, hey, I'm going to hire you. And now we're delivering on that. And having seen many different client experiences over the years, I can tell you that if you screw up in those first couple days, you really, really do a lot to ruin the trust with a client. So we want to get that right. But we're also looking at how fast does it go? How quickly do we get the information do we need? How smooth is it? And then maybe we're looking at the more drawn out part, like in family law or even in injury where we're kind of waiting for things to happen. Sometimes it feels like hurry up and wait. And so we're looking again at different stats there. So that's very dependent upon the firm, but how do we maximize the lifetime value of a client? How do we make sure we're getting referrals? Looking at the churn rate if you're on some kind of retainer model or subscription fees, kind of the alternative pricing for lawyers. I've had a lot of experience in that area, and we want to look at not just how many new leads are coming in, but how many are rolling off, because you could have it might not actually be a bad thing to roll off clients, right? It means we've settled their cases, but it can also be a hit to revenue when you suddenly see a whole bunch of, let's say, family law cases settle and roll off your books. And now you've got to go out and drum up some more business.
So the world's a little upset. I say the apple cart's upset.
Yeah.
What's the number one thing firms need to do today?
Number one thing. Wow. That's like a big question, Jay. Number one thing they need to do. I would actually ask managing partner just to step back and pause because there is just so much hype out there, and ask the one question, where do I really want to go? I think it's, where do I want to go? What do I want? What do I need? And what am I willing to do to get there? And very few of us take time to pause, even for an hour, and just let those thoughts come through. I think having a really clear picture of what you need and then utilizing the resources around you. I would steer clear of any fractional, any agency, any real trusted partner if they're not allowing you to explore how to put that then into the tactics. But if we are running blinds, funny story, played blind man's tag once in high school, which in retrospect, super dumb idea, but like ran straight into a wall, right? If you blindfold yourself, you're going to run into a wall. You're not going to run where you want to run. So like, let's take the blinders off and let's actually think about where we want to go.
When your clients are successful working with you as a fractional COO, what are the top couple things that they should hand off to someone else?
Oh, I mean, the things that I see managing partners holding on to, I think the biggest thing to start handing off is anything that is low value, right? As we look at, I'm not the first person to say this, but if you look at things that you don't like doing, you're not good at doing, and are low value tasks, those need to either be eliminated or they need to go somewhere else. And what I love about this economy, in addition to AI, we have so many resources to go and find labor. Like, you don't have to have somebody in your office for every single one of these tasks. I understand the desire to work in office, but I also think there's just so many ways to get these low value tasks off your plate.
Great. Well, we made it to the end, which is not the end, but it's the
Yeah.
time that I love when I ask you the quick one-liners.
Okay.
So tell me about any apps or techniques you use for personal productivity.
So there are two apps I probably couldn't live without. Calendly is one, and recommendation there, don't just have one calendar, like really utilize the tool. And the other one is a tool called Superhuman, which helps me organize my inbox. It fits in with Outlook and Google Workspace, so you can use it with either. And it's the only thing that keeps me at inbox zero and keeps me organized. I love it. Love
Well, I
it.
love Calendly, so I'll check out Superhuman.
Yes, I love it.
Do you have a personal fitness or wellness routine?
My fitness routine needs some improvement right now, but I am a big journaler. So I will do the brain dump, try to get the mess out of my head and make sense of it. So just finding ways to take care of myself and that toolbox is pretty important to me.
What do you recommend as the best business books?
Oh, I read so many of them. I've been really listening to a lot of I've been listening to and reading a lot of Cal Newport lately, slow productivity, deep work. I think that's very important in this environment. But yeah, I read a lot of different books.
What blogs, podcasts, or YouTubes, when they hit your feed, you pause the other podcast and you immediately listen to?
Yeah, so I've mentioned Cal Newport already. I really like his podcast. I love listening to the Hormozy, especially Layla Hormozy. I think Alex gets a lot of attention and it's great, but Layla is such a good operator and really understands the people and process and just how you fit it all together. I really enjoy her YouTube videos.
Who's your NFL team?
I don't watch the NFL, but I am a college football fan. I went to Notre Dame, so go Irish. People can love or hate me for that, but yeah.
Good one. Well, that one comes with some passion.
Yeah.
What's a great introduction for you? When we meet someone who's in what kind of state do we think of Rachel?
I would say it's that person who's getting to the point of chaos. Like I said, it starts somewhere around 8 to 10 employees, but it might be higher than that. And somebody who's really looking to figure out how to scale this in a way that they care about the client experience as well as their own experience. So I look for people who care about the people in their life, whether that's the clients or the employees.
And if you're just passing 8 or 10 people and you're in chaos, where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm available on LinkedIn at Rachel Steininger. So just all one word. You can also check out my website, upwardacceleration.com. And if you go to upwardacceleration.com/TGR, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. So each week you get some insights on how to better structure your business and some fun personal stories in there too.
Awesome, Rachel. Well, send that over and we'll put that in the show notes too. So
All right.
if you're watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes, you can find that down below. Rachel, this was lots of fun. Thanks for joining us on the TGR podcast.
Thank you, Jay. I'm so happy to be here and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your guests.
Thank you for listening to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Please send questions and comments to podcast@10goldenrules.com. That is podcast@TENgoldenrules.com.